This is Jonathan Ferguson, the keeper of firearms and artillery at the Royal Army's Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And on this bonus episode, Jonathan discusses the basics of a modern-day sniper rifle, its historical definition, and how they work, or don't work, in video games. Make sure to subscribe for more videos featuring Jonathan, and if you'd like to help out the Royal Army's Museum and continue to support Jonathan's work, check out the links in the description of this video. Right, over to Jonathan.
It's easy enough to define what one is now, I think, maybe, which is a highly accurized rifle firing a cartridge of a certain power level that enables you to reach out to really quite extreme ranges, so beyond 800 meters, up to maybe even 2,000 meters, with some sort of an optical sight with high magnification, 12 power, 20 power, something like that, so that you can even identify your target at long range, and then so that you can put a reticle on them, put in all of the data that you need to, the right clicks onto your scope to land a precision single shot at very long range. That's in essence what a sniper rifle has to do, and so it means that they're relatively easy to define, and they're operated in a team of two typically. You might be on your own, but typically a team of two, a spotter to identify targets. As to what that means for the actual weapon, well, traditionally it's been a custom set up, if not custom made, bolt action rifle, typically with a magazine, low capacity, 5 rounds maybe, and you might even single load it because you're so far away and you have people protecting you. Snipers will typically carry a second primary weapon effectively, or their secondary weapon will be something like an assault rifle or perhaps a submachine gun. Increasingly complicating matters a bit are improvements in semi-automatic weapons. They're so good now that you can get semi-automatic rifles that are just as accurate as bolt-action rifles, and so those are taking over now. There's less and less reason to go for a bolt-action. So we're fairly comfortable with what a modern sniper rifle is, but the definition changes over time and space. So the Dragunov, the SVD, is still called a sniper rifle, even though, even in the Soviet and then later the Russian and other armies, it was always treated as what we would call in the West a designated marksman's rifle, which is something that is typically semi-automatic, not bolt action. It might fire the same sort of cartridge as a sniper rifle. It'll probably have a reduced power optical sight, so not 20 power, more like 6 power, something like that, or 4 even. And so different countries' terminology factors in here, and that actually ties up with what sniper rifles, or what sniper rifle used to mean, which was really any rifle used for sniping. I'm doing a lot of air quotes here because terminology changes over time. So we know what a sniper is today, very highly trained, all of that. But a sniper in its original meaning, as it was originally coined in like the 19th century, sniping and a sniper could be anyone with a rifle. Anyone taking a pot shot, essentially. So just a normal rifleman could act as a sniper by picking out an individual target and taking careful aim shots at them. The rifle wouldn't be a sniper rifle, they wouldn't be a trained sniper. The first time in history we get proper trained snipers and we start to see modifications to the rifles is the First World War. Britain, France, Germany, all of the major powers start to look at making more of a science out of sniping. So instead of just, oh, good old Alf, he's good with an SMLE, get him on that firing point, those guys evolve into the designated marksman later on. But some of them, the really skilled ones, would go away to a sniper school and have weeks of training and be given a known accurate rifle. So it'd be just like Alf's SMLE, but it would be one that had been selected from the factory as especially accurate and tested, and you knew that it would create a good group at a given distance. Speaking of distance, we're talking here about relatively close ranges. Probably not much more than standard infantry engagement ranges, so 300 maybe, meters, yards, doesn't really matter. These guys were, by 1918, highly trained, experienced, skilled. Some of them were hunters in civilian life, some of them even brought their own rifles. They invent the ghillie suit to camouflage themselves, that kind of thing. And then, as militaries tend to do, after the First World War, we don't need that anymore. We get rid of the sniper schools, or we certainly did in Britain. And then we have to relearn it all again in World War II, Second World War. By 1918, we'd invented specialist sniper versions of those standard infantry rifles. So they had scope mounts and they had telescopic sights, but they were very low magnification, sort of 3.5 power. What we would now regard as not just a designated marksman sight, but a standard infantry rifle sight. And the exceptional guys would be the snipers of today, snipers and spotters. So it's a real evolution over 100 years. There were snipers before, there were sharpshooters who were highly skilled. We had the rifle regiment in the UK. Famously, the American riflemen were highly skilled in the War of Independence. So it's not that we haven't always had snipers, but as a dedicated role, and especially as a specialised weapon, the first time you can really say we have snipers and sniper rifles is during the First World War. As to the sniper rifle in its video game incarnations over time, I think it's been perhaps more successful than more difficult to handle categories. I think it's easy to get your head around something that's very slow firing, very powerful, very accurate, and it has a this different interface. Probably the very earliest times, games like Hostages even, you would get a depiction of the scope. So probably a black screen, or maybe just superimposed over your view. And so I think games generally have an easier time of it than more nuanced classes of weapons like machine guns, submachine guns, rifles. The implementation is what isn't always successful. Draw distance is a huge thing. Very few games early on had really good draw distance in any meaningful way that would allow you to exploit the relative advantage of having a sniper rifle. Your standard rifle is capable out to the maximum effective range of the game's graphics engine. So the sniper rifle doesn't really do anything unless you make it more powerful. What the representation of a scope lets you do is get right up to that maximum distance within the engine. But again, you need sufficient graphics horsepower to be able to make that work. And even in games like Battlefield, we see that partly for gameplay reasons, not just graphical reasons, you have to scale down the effective range of a sniper rifle. You end up with exaggerated bullet drop. So I think broadly, if we're taking the video game as a pantheon, the sniper rifle is usually quite a distinct thing. Having said that, only a certain selection of games really try and nail the experience of being a sniper in terms of lying in shrubs for hours on end, which no game does, but some kind of get partway there, like famously the Sniper Elite series. If you want to role play a sniper and shoot a sniper rifle that pretty much replicates a real one, you can do that. But your typical mainstream sort of AAA first-person shooter can't really do justice to the sniper rifle. But I think that's more to do with the limitations of gameplay, and if we go far enough back, the limitations of software. Inevitably, because games are trying to replicate, or at least look like, reality, pulling it off is difficult. So this is how we end up with the infamous Call of Duty effect of quick scoping, no scoping, where you can just game the mechanics of what's going on in a way that's just not possible with a real gun. Or even, I guess, in like a VR representation of a sniper rifle. You've got to sort of semi-physically bring that up to your eye and align put the crosshair on the target, potentially compensate for bullet drop and windage and all of that, and then pull the trigger. Whereas your more high-energy first-person shooter, you're able to just peel back draw back the curtains of the veneer of realism and just treat it like a super powerful one-shot gun, and it doesn't really matter that it's a sniper rifle. If you're really good, you can literally just, quick scope. I think we all know how frustrating it is when people employ that strategy. It's not so much that sniper rifles fail as a class of weapon in video games, it's really the implementation that varies quite a bit. If somebody is in concealment 800 meters away or more, and knows exactly where you are, knows the wind speed and direction, knows all the data to dial into their scope, they can take you out without you ever knowing that they were there. That's a tremendous problem for player frustration and enjoyment in a game, of course. To try to compensate for that, well, there are various sort of mechanics you can implement, of course, perks that make it easier to detect snipers, and the big one is, of course, scope glint, which is one of those game mechanics that's based on something real. If you have a look at the front of various scopes on sniper rifles, some of them have a sort of a honeycomb grill, and that's what's called a kill flash, and that prevents the direct reflection of sunlight off your very large, shiny lens. It's sort of effective. It's almost like a silencer for light. It sort of baffles the incoming beams of light and redirects them, scatters them off, essentially. There are other ways to avoid scope glint in real life: placing foliage in front of you, positioning yourself just like a photographer, so that the light isn't causing that flash. In practical terms, I mean, I'm not a sniper. I'm not a trained military person. I don't know how big of a problem scope glint is. It's clearly a problem, or they wouldn't have invented the kill flash. But there are various ways around it. Now, what we see in computer games is, like most features of real life, it's greatly exaggerated. So you end up with this insane million candle power beam of light that may as well be an arrow on the HUD saying, "Here's the sniper, shoot back." But even a really quite realistic series like Sniper Elite does include a scope glint, because you've got to have some parity. You've got to be able to fight back. You know, you are typically one man against however many enemies, including enemy snipers. And just like the movies do, you have to exaggerate certain things to make something enjoyable.
If you'd like to support Jonathan and the work at the Royal Armouries, check out the links in the description where you can donate, become a member, pick up Jonathan's new book, or subscribe to the Royal Armouries themselves. Thank you so much for watching.